Now, if you're a public school educator like I am, then we can all admit that there is almost no money available for us. Now, with music education, it makes it extremely difficult for us to get material and equipment so our students can get the best education possible. Now, in this video, I'm going to show you how you can restore some older equipment so your students have material so they can succeed. What is going on, everybody? Nick Costa here, and in this video, I'm going to be restoring a Ludwig LM402 Supraphonic snare drum. This is a drum from one of my schools in the school district of Philadelphia that's been sitting on a shelf because it can't be used. The reason why I am making this video is because most of the time when a snare drum can't be used in a school system, it's because of the things that are wrong with this drum. So hopefully you can get some information and get your snare drums up and running. Now, before we dive into this video, make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the bell notification. That way you're notified of any additional content that I upload to the channel. Now, when you walk into a band room and look back at the percussion section, you're gonna see primarily two brands, Ludwig and Musser, or Pearl and Adams. Now, for me, there are some schools that I walked into and immediately saw nothing but Ludwig drums, including this LM402 Supraphonic snare drum. Now, this drum was purchased in the early 2000s by the school district of Philadelphia for one of their schools. And when I was assigned to this school in about 2014, this drum was still there. Now, as you can see from this drum, it actually isn't in that bad a shape. The top head has been defaced with somebody's wonderful art, which has been blurred out because I don't want to get in trouble with YouTube. And the snare throw off is broken. And educators, let's have a quick conversation here. If you're a band director, there is really no need to constantly stop rehearsals to have somebody turn off the snares in the back of your classroom. Although it seems annoying while you're rehearsing or having other lessons, it's not as annoying as the squeaky clarinet section. Also, a lot of people don't know how to re-engage snare wires, so they over-tighten the fine-tuning knob, and then when they try to tighten and engage it, that's when the strainer breaks, like the one on this drum. So to save yourself money and a lot of time, just leave it. So now that that's out of the way, like I mentioned, this drum really isn't in bad shape. Just needs a good cleaning, needs new top and bottom heads, needs a new throw off. So let's get this drum set up so I can start disassembling it. Now, in order to disassemble this drum, you only really need two tools. A drum key, which I prefer the Remo Quick Key because it's magnetic, and you could attach a drill bit to it to loosen the tension rods, and a screwdriver, which is what you'll need to take the screws off of your lugs, as well as loosen the screws so you can take your snare wires off, as well as the throw off and butt plate. So step number one is to strip this drum, which we can do in 3, 2, 1. Now, everything is off this drum except the throw off because I wanted to show you how you can remove this. This is a very common thing with snare drums in a band room or a classroom. The snare drums are disengaged, and then somebody who's just unaware of how these actually work will come over and they want the snare drums to be engaged, so they immediately think that in order to do that, you have to tighten the tension rod, the fine-tune knob, all the way. When they hear that that doesn't work, somebody comes over and maybe we'll tell them, oh, you have to actually re-engage by lifting the lever. And at that point, the snares are so tight that either this lever bends or the components that are on the inside of it break. That's exactly what happened here. Now, in order to remove this, you're going to see that there are screws. There's one here, and there's also one on the bottom. You're going to notice it's going to be a little difficult to get to those screws when the throw off is put together. So what you want to do is you want to loosen that fine-tune knob all the way until this main plate here is loose, and then you can slide it down to remove it. This provides you with access for those screws right there. Simply take flathead screwdriver in this case, and on the inside of the drum there is a washer and a nut, so you can just hold it with your hand and then loosen the screw until all of it comes right off. You can repeat the process for the bottom screw. And now the drum is completely stripped of all hardware. Now, taking a quick look at this shell, it's not in that bad a shape. It is dirty, I'll give you that, and it is pitting in some areas. This is a very common thing with Supraphonic snare drums. Over time, the chrome plating will start to pit just from being exposed to the elements. You can see just looking on the inside of the drum as I rotate the shell, there is no pitting because, again, debris, dirt, oil from people's hands isn't really touching the inside, so the pitting never occurs. Now, looking carefully, you can see that there are dents here on the shell where the throw off was, so it's safe to say this drum took a tumble at some point and fell on top of that throw off. Now, with that being said, I can leave it as is, or I can attempt to pull those dents and massage the shell a little bit, aka take a rubber mallet and just tap it from the inside to see if I can get that to come out a little bit and remove the dent. It's not going to fully remove it. There is a way to do it if you're tedious. Take time, kind of like dent removal of a car. Although since this is going back into the classroom, we're more concerned about making sure everything works properly and the drum sounds good. So that's going to be step number one. See if I can take a rubber mallet and just tap this out a little bit. From there, the next step is to clean the shell. All right, so have a rubber mallet. See if I can tap this out. So overall, it doesn't look too bad. You can still see the dents in it a little bit. However, it did come out a bit more. Almost like dent removal of a car, you want to massage the metal to get it back in the shape. The other thing that you have to kind of remember, however, is that as you move metal back and forth, it starts to stretch. Over time, that can break. It becomes brittle. Now, if I was really gonna sit down and take care of this, I would heat up this area of the metal with a heat gun, and that would allow the metal to just flex and bend a little bit easier to get it flat and back in the shape. However, it's not that bad. If you look from the inside, you can still see there's a crease, goes right across the middle of the holes, the mounting holes for the throw off. That's exactly where the pressure hit when the drum took a tumble. You can still see the divots are right there. Better than what it was, which is all that really matters at this point. It's not perfect, but it'll still work. So now that that's done, next step, clean the shell. Now, if you watched any of my other restoration videos, then you are familiar with, there are a couple things that I use to clean hardware, metal on drums. The first is Brasso. Very easy. I actually got this a while ago for under $3. And I'm still using it. Brasso is great because it's not too harsh of a metal cleaner. Now, Brasso does have an abrasive in it. The abrasive that is in Brasso helps clean the shell, shine it up. Works really well on Supraphonics that are chrome plated, even though they are pitting. So first step is you're just gonna put a little bit on a microfiber cloth and apply it to the shell in round circular motions. This is going to help clean off the shell, get rid of any of those contaminants that you are seeing. That's actually removal of chrome plating from the collar of the drum head. While you're at it, you can clean the bearing edge. Once you do that, you can take a different microfiber towel to remove any of that excess Brasso polish. Now, one thing to keep in mind, if your shell is pitted, which most Supraphonics are, Brasso will not fix those pits that you have because that is just flaking of the chrome plating. So unfortunately, the only way to fix that is to have the drum re-chromed, which can be quite expensive. So as you can see, I just did the top of the drum. It's a world of difference compared to the bottom. You can still see the pitting. That's what those marks are right up here at the top. But compared to the bottom, got rid of all of that tarnish that is on the shell. So let's flip it over, do the same exact thing to the bottom half. And again, in a circular motion, apply it to the shell, making sure it is evenly coating to help clean it. Now some of those really tough areas, like say underneath where the rubber washer was for the butt plate, you may need to apply a little bit more to your microfiber towel and just go over that once again to help clean that off. The other tricky spot is going to be the bead of the shell. An easy way to fix that, just take your finger and you can kind of dig into where the shell and the bead meet, and that'll help you clean off as much as you can. Once again, take care of the bearing edge, because if there is anything on that bearing edge, it's going to affect the drum, the tuning of it, especially once you got a drum head on there. If there's anything that goes in between that bearing edge and the drum head, start to make it a little bit difficult to tune. Also, on metal drums, like the ones that Ludwig makes, that have these bearing edges that are crimped over or bent over, you want to make sure that if there is anything stuck to that, you remove it as well, just so it's easier to tune the drum when you put new heads on it. Now, like I mentioned, this drum is, from what I'm told, from the early 2000s, say around like 2003, 2004-ish. So there are not going to be any dates stamped on the inside of the shell, like say more vintage Supraphonics from the 60s or 70s. There's a little more pitting there too. Since I'm not seeing any dates stamped on the inside of the shell, also going to clean the inside because I don't have to worry about risking removing any of that, which if this was a vintage drum, you'd want to try to avoid, so people could see that original date stamp on the inside. There's a couple areas it seems like a little more hard to reach. Again, bit tarnishing, nothing too crazy, but enough that you can see it in the right light. So just going over it one more time just to help get that off the shell. So shell is cleaned, looking pretty good actually, minus the pitting from, again, the plating coming off. We'll put that off to the side. So next step, hardware. Now with hardware, you can do one of two things. You can continue to use Brasso if you want, or you can use a weighting polish like Never Dull by Eagle One, which is what I prefer because you can simply take a little bit, rip it off, and you can take a lug like this one right here. Now you can see the tarnishing on it. Again, just dirty. Take the polishing cloth, just wipe the lug down. And with these Imperial lugs, you want to make sure that you are getting into those crevices to help break up any of that dirt and debris that could be built up. Also, make sure that you get the top and the bottom of the lug as well. Take that microfiber towel you were using to wipe off the Brasso and wipe off the lug. Same lug. Don't mind my fingerprints, because again, my gloves have a little bit of the polish on it now. So there's one. Here's one I haven't done yet. In case you want to see the difference, this is the one that was just cleaned. This is the one that hasn't been cleaned. If I flip them over, the way the light's hitting them, big difference. So I'm going to continue this process for all 10 lugs and then be right back. All right, so now that all 10 lugs are done, let's grab the camera real quick so you can see. Anytime that I do this process, it's always separate what's been done from what hasn't been done. So all the stuff that hasn't been done is over here to the right. Things that have been done are off to the left. That piece of Never Dull that I ripped off originally is the same piece that I used for all of them. There is still plenty of material on there, so I can wipe down the additional components of the drum. The next step, clean off this butt plate. Now, I did get, thanks to a Donors Choose campaign, a new P88 AC throw off and butt plate combo pack that'll be applied to the drum, just in case if the spacing is different between this butt plate and the one that's in here. I'd rather clean this so then it's ready to go, just in case if I have to throw it back on. So using that same piece of Never Dull that I was using to clean off all of the lugs, just go through, clean off the butt plate, same concept here. Just wipe it down, making sure that you get in any of those crevices, because that's where most of the grime and junk builds up. And then with that same microfiber, wipe it down. So from here, lugs, butt plate, all done. We don't have to worry about cleaning the old throw off because it was broken in the first place. So the next step is to clean the tension rods. Now, looking at the tension rods, they are, again, not in that bad a shape, and none of them are out of round. Sometimes with tension rods, they can bend, especially if they have a lot of tension on them or if a drum takes a tumble. Luckily, all of these are good. Don't have to worry about it. What I'm going to do, however, is just, again, wipe them down with Neverdull, try and get some of the grime that might be on them off. One thing that can happen over time is that dirt can get trapped in the threading, which then can make it difficult to turn any of those tension rods. It also can cause your lug, the receiver tube, to lock up if there's a lot of dirt inside of it. This is also why a lot of companies will put grease inside either the receiver tube of the lug, or they'll apply a little bit of grease to the threading of the tension rod to make it a bit easier to tighten or loosen. So there is a clean tension rod after Neverdull has been applied to it. Now the easiest way to clean a tension rod, take that Neverdull weighting pad, wrap it around the threading, and then just turn the tension rod. If you have a drill, which I don't have with me today, and one of the Remo quick keys, you can attach this to a drill and then on a slow speed, just rotate it. You can also do this by hand if you want. Makes it a little bit easier than trying to get your hand grasped around the head of the tension rod. All right, so I'm gonna repeat this process for all 20 tension rods and then move on to the next step. All right, lugs, tension rods, done. There's shell, also done. Final step, hoops. Now, hoops can be very interesting just because of all the flanges on them. They're also not too difficult, especially when they're in this condition. There's no surface rust anywhere, so don't have to worry about tinfoil and WD-40, which you might have seen in other restoration videos that I've uploaded. These just need a simple cleaning. So we can get away with, again, Neverdull. However, this piece is a little beat at this point. So we're gonna get a new piece. It's gonna be a little bit bigger as well. And once again, just wrap the hoop in the Neverdull and just apply it, go around. You're gonna see that it cleans up. Might have to do a couple passes with it as well. Now, if you use Neverdull and you notice that there's still some tarnish on there, you can go over it again. Or, to make it a bit easier, you can switch over to Brasso, which has a bit more of an abrasive inside of the chemical. Makes it easier to clean and break up some of that dirt and debris that might be on the hoop. So just gonna go around, making sure that I get every flange of the hoop. Now, just like everything else, you take the microfiber cloth that you were using to wipe everything down and remove that excess polish from the Neverdull pad. Still some things on there. So we're gonna switch over to Brasso just to make it a bit quicker and easier. And not bad. Rather than doing the same process, we're gonna skip right over to the Brasso. Let's see if we can do this in one shot, which we might be able to. Now, one thing to keep in mind when it comes to snare drums, the top hoop 99% of the time is going to be in way worse shape than the bottom hoop, because that hoop could be struck with a stick for rim shots. It's going to collect a lot of dirt, a lot of debris, stick shavings. The drum gets knocked into something. The top hoop most likely is what's going to take the initial hit. We've all seen snare drums rubbed up against rack toms or accidentally hit, you know, whatever. So you might have to just put a little excess elbow grease into it. There's some stuff stuck in the crevice right here where the collar of the drum head hits. So I'm just trying to clean that off. Yeah, all right. And again, another hoop, nice and clean. So now that everything has been cleaned, put that piece of Never Dull It back in the box. This piece can be thrown away. Time to start putting this drum back together. There we go. All right, so time to start reassembling the drum. Pretty straightforward. Take a look at your lugs and look for the ones that don't have as much damage to them, maybe scratches or maybe dents if they took like a huge hit. All of these are looking pretty good so far. But whichever ones are the best looking cosmetically, put them towards the front where the badge is. And any of the ones that are, maybe they got a bad scratch or anything like that, put them towards the back so they're not seen. Now, as I apply these lugs back to the drum, you may notice that there are no gaskets that go between the lug and the shell. That is because Ludwig did not do that up until recently. As a matter of fact, if you check any drum forum, Facebook group, anything else, some folks will take a new Ludwig drum and immediately remove them because they feel that that rubber washer is affecting the sound of the drum, which it is, dampening the shell a little bit. And they would prefer to have it sound like the older drums, which didn't have it. That is completely user preference, just like looking at your lugs to see which ones have more blemishes on them than others and putting them in specific locations. So if you are taking a drum apart, reassembling it, if you notice that there are no gaskets between your lugs and the shell, don't worry about it. It's most likely it didn't come with them. All right, 3 down, 7 to go. All right, all 10 lugs have been reapplied to the shell. Next step, applying throw off and butt plate. So once again, these are fantastic because of the fact that it is the upgraded P88 throw off that Ludwig now puts on all of their snare drums. If you have one that's like the older models where, say, your lever is bent or it breaks, or you're just having a hard time with the durability of it, maybe the snares are coming loose over time while you're playing, maybe the snares are disengaging, you can't beat these. They're sturdier, easy to engage and disengage, plus it's got teeth to lock in so you don't have to worry about those snares coming loose as you play the drum. And they look really nice. So one thing I always do is I loosen the fine-tuning knob of these only because I've experienced some of them when they come out of the box, they are all the way tight. So then if you have to use it to adjust your snare tension, you run into some issues, and I'd rather not do that. Now, just to keep with the look of the drum, going to use the original butt plate. Let's put that in place. Now, new throw off. Once again, it's a metal shell, so it's pretty thin. So we're going to use the smallest screw here. And one thing I always recommend is to start by hand. If you get any type of resistance as you're trying to tighten it initially, that means that you're cross-threading and you don't have that screw in quite straight enough. So always start by hand. And then once you can get it to turn and not worry about cross-threading, which will lock up the screw, which can break inside, and then you're in big trouble. All right, let's go ahead and apply hoops and heads. Once again, thanks to that Donors Choose campaign, we're able to get a new set of heads. In this case, Remo Ambassador snare side head and a controlled sound coated head for the top. Educators, you are well aware when it comes to drum heads in the classroom, whatever are the most durable and will last the longest is what you want to go with. Mainly because, once again, budgets can be a little tight and you can't be replacing heads on a regular basis. Now, as I apply the tension rods, you may have noticed I have a drum tuning playlist going over how to tune different parts of a drum set, one of which is the snare drum. So I am going to use that same process that I showed in that video. And if that's something that you're interested in, I put a link at the top of the screen and in the description so you can make sure that you tune your drums and get them to sound the best they possibly can sound. Now that I have bottom head, hoop, and tension rods on, always start out by finger tightening all of the tension rods. That way they are around the same starting point. Makes it a little bit easier to tune. One thing to always keep in mind when you are applying hoops, make sure the one that has the cutouts is on the bottom, and make sure those cutouts are in line with your butt plate and throw off for the snare wires to go through. I'm gonna go through the process, get this drum tuned up, and then be right back. All right, now that that is all put back, it's time to add the snare wires. Now, again, when I tune my snare drums, I like my bottom head to be tabletop tight. Allows me to get a nice, snappy, direct response out of my snare wires, which is what I prefer. Now, when you're applying snare wires, you want to make sure that they are in the middle of the drum, as well as making sure the wires themselves aren't crooked. Wires can become crooked if you have tension on one side of your snare wires over the other. Now, once you have them and you can see that they're straight, and once you have them straight, you can tighten the lug nuts down on both sides in this case. And then you want to test to make sure that you can apply the snare wires or the lever without too much tension or resistance. In this case, I have this completely loose and it's a little too tight. So I'm gonna loosen up the snare wires on the throw off side. That way they hang off the drum. So I don't have to worry about having them too tight. All right, top head. Once again, tension rods in. Go around and make sure that they're all finger tight so they are around the same starting point. Makes it a tad bit easier to tune the drum. All right, let's go around and tune the drum. Now, if you hear those pops like that, it's okay. It's the collar of the drum head seating to the bearing edge. Now, with top heads, you also want to help seat the head a bit. So once you got some tension on it, apply just a little bit of pressure on the middle as if you are giving CPR. That helps stretch the head out a little bit. You're also going to hear it drops the pitch of the drum as well. Then you can go and continue tightening and tuning your drum. Now, this drum in particular will be used for the drum set at one of my schools, which our students like the drums to be really snappy, direct in your face. All right, now that's a little bit higher than where I would usually tune this drum. However, since it is a new head, that's gonna help just stretch it out a bit more, get it to seat. It'll drop in tuning a little bit as it's continuing to stretch across the drum. Now we have a fully functional snare drum, brand new heads. It's all cleaned up so the kids are gonna like how it looks, like how it sounds. It doesn't look like it's completely beat and something that's been sitting in a school for well over a decade at this point. Now that this is put together, let's head back to the drum kit, put it through the ringer, go through a few different tunings so you can hear the versatility of an LM402 Supraphonic and what this exact drum now sounds like. as drummers, we all know that the Supraphonic is one of the most recorded, if not the most recorded, snare drum. The construction of this drum being an aluminum shell with chrome plating allows it to be very versatile. Additionally, they're pretty affordable, which makes them a great option for the classroom. You can use these snare drums as part of a drum set or the snare drum in your traditional band or orchestra. And because they're made out of metal, if for some reason they do take a tumble, they might be able to survive compared to a wood snare drum. And as you could hear from the demo portion, they have a pretty broad tuning range. Now, either way, I would love to get your feedback on what you thought of this snare drum, so make sure you leave it in the comment section below, letting me know. Also, if you have any other additional questions on maybe how to restore a snare drum, or if your snare drum has some issues in your classroom, leave that in the comment section and I'll try my best to answer them. And that is it. Thank you so much for checking out this video on restoring a Ludwig LM402 Supraphonic snare drum. And until next time, see you later.